Jojo review. So in this episode, we conclude the Jojo fight. Jojo does have a very strong stand. White Album is quite ridiculous in how much it can freeze, or should I say to what degree it can freeze. I still say that Aokiji from One Piece could beat the crap out of him though. Fight me, nerds. But this episode was a pretty good Mista episode, and from what I understand, the Jojo fight is when Mista's backstory was originally presented in the manga, but they actually presented it earlier in the anime, and in this episode we ended up getting the second half of the backstory, revealing that Mista actually went to prison after shooting those guys. Even though it was self-defense, they didn't see it that way because, you know, he perfectly shot all of them. And they're thinking, well, that seems a little bit excessive for self-defense. It seems like he just raided those guys. I can understand that to some degree, but I mean, they did have guns, and there was a female victim there. But yeah, that's like the traumatic reason why he considers 4 an unlucky number. He shot 4 bullets into those guys. I already basically knew the second half of the backstory just because someone in the comments told me beforehand, like way back when the first half of the backstory came. I was a little bit confused. I was like, oh, why does he think 4 is an unlucky number then? It saved his life. I didn't realize that we were ever going to get back to this backstory, but we did. Oh, you manga readers. Actually, I really don't consider that to be that much of a spoiler. It's not a very big deal. But now onward to the events of the episode. So Giorno's abilities aren't quite as useful in this episode because a lot of things that he creates with life to it immediately breaks apart due to the cold. Turns some car parts into like vines and they all break apart, but he also turns some parts of the car into grass, which is able to survive in the cold. So Mista picks a bunch of it together, and then White Album comes over with the ice and he freezes all the grass together into a snowboard. It was probably one of my favorite parts of the episode just because I thought the idea of fighting an enemy and just snowboarding around their ice was hilarious. I wish that lasted a lot longer than it did, because I did burst out laughing when I saw him just whoosh with the snowboard. It would have been so funny if he was like creating ice like Nani, and then Mista's just snowboarding on extreme dudes, but nah. So White Album undoes the ice, which ends up saving Giorno's life, and then redoes it only on Mista so that he's like trapped in the ice before he can get out of the water. That's when Giorno undoes the effect that was on the grass, so he turns it back into car parts, and Mista shoots at the car parts and makes it so that one of the screws goes through the White Album armor, and he actually like shoots it through the armor, goes into his head a little bit, but you know, not far enough to kill him. So that's when Mista figures out what his weakness of his stand is. You cover yourself in completely sealed armor, and then also like cover that in ice. You need somewhere to get your oxygen. So it turns out that there's a hole at the back of White Album and the back of Giacchio's neck that's giving him air this entire time. But you can't really see it because one of the parts of his helmet is covering it up sometimes. So it's only when like his head is down or he turns his head that you see the hole. So Mista knows, okay, I gotta aim there because that's his weak spot. So he shoots at some fish as a distraction, so that Giacchio will look over there and be like, what the heck's, what is he doing? And then the hole is revealed, and then he, you know, shoots, and Sex Pistols reflects the hole right into his opening. But wait! It turns out he can freeze the molecules in the air, which is quite nuts. I'm not gonna question the logic of that, but he freezes the molecules in the air as a somewhat of a pathway so that it'll reflect a million times and then aim itself right back at Mista. And he can't actually see where the molecules have been frozen in the air. So what ends up happening is Giorno opens up his wrist and sprays blood on the ice molecules and reveals where they are so that Mista can find a pathway to get past all of the ice and get to the open spot behind his neck. It seems to have not worked, and it's kind of funny. He's what ends up happening is Mista gets shot with like a bunch of his own bullets, and he sprays blood out, and it gets on the face part of the armor, so Giacchio can't see for a moment, and then he shoots some bullets to trip Giacchio up. And it turns out that the pole he was aiming at to deflect his bullets has been carved out to create like a sharpened part of the pole, and he falls back on that and it lands right into his neck hole. So now the plan is to just fire as many bullets as possible to push him back against the pole, but unfortunately he still has the ice deflecting all the bullets, so it just keeps on coming back at Mista. It's kind of like one of those funny anime moments. It's like, oh, all the bullets come back to me, well that just means I have to shoot you more. It's like the typical All Might scenario. Oh, your ability is shock absorption? That just means I have to punch you harder! But Giacchio is smart. He freezes the blood coming out of his neck to actually hold his head up and prevent him from going any more onto the spikes. And the last bullet that was being reflected goes right to Mista's head, but wait, Giorno turns that bullet into flesh and is able to heal him. And now that Giorno is on land with Mista, he's able to just summon gold experience and beat him senselessly into the pole until it goes all the way through. To which he kind of explains that when I turn the bullets into pieces of your flesh, I'm not actually healing you, so it'll still hurt a lot. And he's going through all the different holes, and he's got a lot of holes in him, Mista does. But we end the Jojo episode basically on a big joke. A brilliantly done joke, might I add. Giorno is trying to heal Mista, and Mista is moaning the whole time because it hurts so much. Narantia is looking for them. He comes in and just sees Giorno around Mista's waist as Mista's moaning. You hear Bruno on the other line like, hey Narantia, have you found them yet? And he's just like, no, I don't see anything. Something's in my eye. So, Narantia is traumatized. And then we have an ending scene where I'm guessing we're seeing the boss of this group, and he's kind of talking to himself. The person who was at the computer is dead. So we have the disc. I'm assuming we have the disc. I mean, we beat the guy. We'll get that back. Raid his corpse for it. So now the question is, what's on the computer disc? What's the next stop for our heroes? Who's the next guy they're gonna throw at them? But yeah, great episode. I'm almost a little bit bummed out that Mista doesn't get to solo this guy. I really love Mista a lot. He's probably my favorite so far, honestly. They all have very interesting backstories, but Mista is the coolest. You can't beat Mista. You all have your sad sob stories, but Mista has a cool backstory. He's like, man, I wasn't crying over my mom. I was out there shooting gangster rapists while all of their bullets simultaneously just went past me without me even trying to dodge. It's the coolest, man. I can't wait to see what's next, and I hope you enjoyed my review and my fangirling ramblings. Remember to comment below what you thought of the episode, like the video, just for the sake of liking the video. Check out the description for a random Jojo surprise, because I still do those. They're very random. It's not free, but it's a surprise. I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Program restart.